Number 10. Snake attacks zoo owner. The owner of a zoo was recently attacked by one of his very own snakes. Even though this guy is an expert on reptiles, he didn't seem able to save himself from nearly being ripped apart by an oversized python. His name is Jay Brewer, and he's the owner and founder of Reptile Zoo in Fountain Valley, California. He's been operating this place for at least 10 years, though he has over 30 years of experience dealing with venomous reptiles. The terrifying incident happened while Jay was showing off some eggs that a reticulated python had just laid. What he didn't anticipate was the snake would end up being protective of her little eggs. She turned on him, tried to sink her fangs right into the meat of his face, and nearly took his eye out. Luckily, Jay was faster than the snake and managed to pull his face away just in time. But perhaps the most remarkable part was the strategy employed by the python. The lady snake had waited until the exact second that Jay averted his eyes before she struck. If not for his 30 years of experience, those eyes may have ended up being skewered on the python's teeth. Number 9. Snake meets bat. Only in Australia would somebody walk out of their home and see a giant snake eating a flying fox bat bigger than a house cat. That's exactly what happened when Park Ranger Louise Keene was going on a daily stroll through her property in Northern Territory. She came across the disturbing sight of the snake, completely wrapped around the huge bat, slowly trying to stuff it in its mouth. According to Louise herself, it took the snake 6 hours to get the bat completely inside of its stomach. The snake ate its head, its wings, and its entire body. If you're wondering just how a snake could fit a bat, wings and all, into its mouth, it all came down to how the snake compressed the flying critter. The snake managed to crush the bat's wings and crush its body into a bite-sized snack that fit perfectly into its hungry jaws. And as fascinating as it is to read about, it's something altogether scary to witness in real life. Number 8. The Tennessee snake. At a public park in Tennessee, a hiker had a rather unfortunate encounter with a large and menacing serpent. Courtney Dunn was strolling near the waterfall at Gregory Mill Park in Smyrna when she discovered a snake so big she nearly had a heart attack. The enormous creature was hanging in the trees like a thick, scaly electric cable. To make matters even more horrifying, she was with 2 of her children at the time, with the youngest being just 4 years old. The danger was that one of the snakes would see the small kid and view it as a snack. Courtney was able to think quickly and step in front of her children to keep them out of harm's way. She also pulled out her phone and took a picture, then hurried from the hanging reptile before it could do any damage. It's not clear what kind of snake this was, but it did have a very thick body and appeared to be over 4 feet long. It may have been someone's pet that escaped, or there could be more deadly snakes in Tennessee than people realize. Number 7. Python on the balcony. On the Sunshine Coast of Australia, a snake catcher was recently called in to deal with an enormous serpent lounging on the balcony railing of a terrified family's home. The snake was a carpet python, and it very clearly had a full belly. There was an obscure shape inside its stomach, making its gut bulge. Nobody knows what the creature ate, but it was almost certainly a local pet. The family was so scared when they saw the snake that they called Stuart McKenzie. Stuart, a professional snake catcher, was positively floored by the size of the animal. He nicknamed it the Beast of Buderim. Stuart went on to say that it was the biggest snake he had dealt with in almost a year. It's pretty rare to find an enormous snake in a residential area these days, primarily because they get run over by cars. The snake probably moved into the backyard because there was a family of possums living in the trees. But when the snake went onto the balcony to get a bit of sunshine and relaxation, the family had Stuart come and evict the poor guy. He never even got a chance to bite anyone. Number 6. Snake hunter attacked. A snake hunter, nicknamed the Python Cowboy, was recently attacked by a giant python in Florida over 15 feet long. The Florida local was hunting for invasive pythons out in the middle of the swamp. It didn't take long for him to find an absolute giant lurking in the underbrush. He grabbed the snake's tail, tried to drag it out of the bushes, and that was when the snake flipped the script. She suddenly lashed out at the Python Cowboy, sinking her enormous teeth into his forearm and almost ripping his hand off. She then went in for more and more bites, stabbing the hunter to the point to where he had blood gushing out of his biceps. Thanks to having so much experience with these monstrous beasts, the python hunter was able to keep calm during the brutal assault. When the snake finally stopped biting him, he managed to tie off his arm with a piece of scrap cloth, get a firm hold on the python's head, and then drag it away. He was bleeding and in rough shape, but he stayed cool until he got the snake back to his truck and butchered it. As for his wounded arm, it turned out to be nothing more than a bloody flesh wound. Number 5. Beach snake. At Bathers Beach near Perth, Australia, something not only terrifying but also deadly was discovered washed up on the shore. A local resident was taking their morning walk when they discovered a rather unusual snake rolling around in the sand. The local knew right away that this was no ordinary snake. So, she called in Jacqueline Lloyd, the owner of Coastal Reptile Removers, to come deal with the situation. When Jacqueline got there, she was alarmed to realize this was no ordinary snake. It was a yellow-bellied sea snake, something so venomous that it can kill a person in just minutes with a single bite. How on earth did such a venomous creature get on the beach? The experts say it probably got swept up on the tide, stuck in the sand, and then was unable to slither its way back into the water. The reason this type of snake is so venomous is that it hunts fish. Its venom needs to act extremely quickly so that after it bites the fish once, the venom will render it paralyzed and unable to flee. This translates to an extremely toxic venom that can paralyze a person just as quickly as it can paralyze a fish. Jacqueline was sure to make a warning to the public, telling them to stay away from any snake they see on the beach. As if Australians didn't have enough to worry about, now they have toxic creatures slithering around on their beaches. Number 4. Trauma at Lake Norman. Heatherly Noble was recovering from a snake attack that she suffered in May when she was traumatized for a second time by another unexpected snake encounter. The first encounter actually resulted in Heatherly tearing her ACL. She had been on a ladder trimming a bush in her yard when the snake appeared. It poked its head from the bush and tried to bite her, and Heatherly screamed and tried to scramble off the ladder. She caught her foot and tore her ACL, and the serpent bit her on her hand and then slithered away. It was almost like the snake had targeted her on purpose. The second encounter was while Heatherly was still recovering, and to be honest, still a little traumatized. She was walking with her 2 dogs no more than half a mile from her house when she saw a plastic bag in the grass. Assuming the plastic bag was a piece of litter, she walked over to pick it up, but as she reached for the bag, it turned into an 8-foot snake. Luckily, the second snake didn't bite her. She managed to turn and hobble away as quick as she could, but suffice to say, Heatherly is now scared just to step out of her front door. Number 3. Paddleboard snake attack. Brody Moss, a filmmaker from Australia, was paddleboarding when he had a very scary encounter with a sea snake. It was an extremely close call for the paddleboarder, who saw the snake rise up from the darkness of the ocean, then chase him on his paddleboard. The snake got so close that it put its head on the paddleboard, just inches away from his ankles. If the snake had bit him, Brody may have been instantly paralyzed. If that had been the case, he probably would have tipped over, splashed into the water, and drowned because of the snake's venom, rendering him unable to use his limbs. He was fortunate that the snake didn't like the smell of him. It looked at his ankles, then turned, dipped back in the water, and swam away. Number 2. Serpent at the supermarket. Shoppers at an Australian supermarket got a little closer to nature than they were hoping for when a giant python, over 10 feet long, was spotted slithering through the shelves. This happened on a Monday night at a supermarket in the northwest district of Sydney, right in the middle of the bustling city. The snake was a diamond python, something that absolutely should not be lurking anywhere near people. According to eyewitness Helena Alati, she was looking for ingredients to make dinner that night when the enormous constrictor appeared less than a few inches from her face. It popped out from between jars of spices and showed her its fangs. Coincidentally, Helena just so happened to be a volunteer snake catcher. Whereas most people would have freaked out if this happened to them, Helena was able to remain calm. She informed the other shoppers to stay away from the aisle, then quickly drove home to get her snake catching equipment. She returned to the supermarket to take care of the problem herself. Helena wrangled the snake in a bag, drove it out into the middle of nowhere, and then dropped it off. It's just lucky she was the one who found it, and not some poor child that the snake mistook for its dinner. And number 1. Venomous sea snakes. A new study has revealed why venomous sea snakes seem to be targeting scuba divers in Australia. There have been multiple reports in recent months of divers being attacked unprovoked by extremely venomous sea snakes. In particular, the olive sea snake, which can reach an astounding length of over 6 feet. These snakes breathe air, but spend almost all their lives in the ocean. They move extremely quickly, too fast for an unsuspecting human to get out of the way. Most encounters don't result in death, but the possibility of being bitten and killed is always there. The olive sea snake has neurotoxic venom that can kill a person in mere minutes. What did the newest study reveal? Scientists have learned that the sea serpents are likely targeting the human divers because they mistake them for other snakes. According to the Smithsonian Institute, in a desperate search for love, the sexually charged sea snakes are simply looking for mates. It normally happens when a male sea snake misplaces the female it had been trying to mate with. Since snakes can't see that well, it goes hurtling through the water towards whatever shape it sees. Sometimes, these shapes happen to be human divers. The good news is that once an enormous snake realizes it's made a mistake, it takes off in the other direction, frantically searching for its lost lover. Number 8. Twin burglars. We've all heard of stories where one twin commits a crime and then accuses the other, right? Or maybe that's TV. But anyways, it's more so when they have the same gender and are a perfect match with identical physical characteristics. In 2009, twin brothers Hassan and Abbas O and one other man were involved in a jewelry heist in Germany. The three men robbed a luxury boutique and made off with watches and jewels worth over $5 million. The men were seen by security cameras. One of them also left a glove behind. Police then extracted DNA samples from the glove, and it led to the twin brothers Hassan and Abbas. But investigators couldn't determine which brother had committed the heist, or whether both brothers were involved. Neither of them confessed, and the CCTV footage proved to be useless because all the men were wearing masks. Police had no choice but to free both brothers, even though the jewelry remained missing. The brothers then thanked the state for allowing them to be freed, after it could not establish the exact identity of the criminal. Number 7. Daniel and David DeWild. In July 2003, Heather DeWild disappeared after going to see her estranged husband, Dan DeWild. She had gone to his house to pick up a set of insurance cards for their 2 kids and sign a check. Heather's parents got worried when she didn't come back. They called Dan, who told them that Heather left the kids with him and went shopping, but the parents found that very suspicious. When questioned, Dan was told by his twin brother, David, not to answer the detective's questions. Investigators started to believe this was not a missing persons case at all, but rather foul play. However, no murder weapon was found, no fingerprints, and no blood in the house where police believed she was killed. Nothing tied the brothers to Heather's murder, even though they were both viewed as suspects. 6 weeks after she disappeared, Heather's body was found on a road by a construction worker. Eventually, the case grew cold, and Heather's parents felt they would never get closure as to what happened to their daughter. But 2 years later, a new district attorney was elected, and they went to him for help. He and his team started going through all the information that had been gathered on the case, and what they found blew the minds of everyone involved. Prosecutors learned that before Heather went missing, the twin DeWild brothers had been watching a lot of forensic shows in crime TV. They had started plotting the crime when Heather filed for divorce. Later, David turned on his twin brother, revealing that Dan was the one that killed Heather, even filming a reenactment of the crime. Dan DeWild was eventually convicted and sentenced to 74 years. David took a plea deal in return for his testimony and received 12 years for second-degree murder. Number 6. Sabina and Ursula. Okay, try to keep up with this one. Ursula and Sabina Eriksson, twin Swedish sisters, lived a simple life with their families. They had no previous record of mental illness or criminal activity. Then, one day, Ursula flew from the United States to Ireland to see her sister. What followed was a flurry of brutality and shared lunacy, resulting in a chain of road accidents, a murder, and a few baffled officers. In 2008, once in Ireland, the twins took a bus to London for reasons unknown, but they were kicked off the bus right in the middle of the highway for acting like a bunch of hooligans. So, they started to walk in the middle of the road, carefree and not at all bothered by the vehicles honking and speeding by them. They then came upon some cops that were being videotaped for a BBC program. Every bit of the crazy moment that followed was filmed by the cameras. The twins were apprehended by authorities and were calm until Ursula suddenly rushed across the highway and ran into a truck's wheels. After this, Sabina did the exact same thing, only a few moments later, and was hit by a vehicle. The poor officers didn't even have any time to respond. This was, however, still not the end of the story. Sabina stood up and attacked the cops regardless of the fact that a car had just hit her. 6 people were needed to hold her down. Ursula was enraged as well, and probably would have done the same if she hadn't just broken her legs. Sabina cooled down after that and acted so calm that the officers let her go the following day. This turned out to be a catastrophic mistake. She went on to kill a guy who offered her a place to stay and then jumped off a 40-foot bridge hours later. She managed to escape once again. She was later handed a 5-year sentence for the murder. But why only 5 years? Because her attorneys had several issues establishing whether she was psychotic or not, and if yes, to what extent. Which makes us wonder if Sabina was the one that was insane. Why did Ursula leap on the highway? There was no trace of alcohol or drugs in either of their systems. According to experts, one of the twins struggled from a sort of temporary insanity, while the other was infected by her sister's craziness. The relationship was so deep that when one of them lost her mind, the other did as well. They've both been pronounced sane since then, but are they really? Number 5. The Silent Twins. June and Jennifer Gibbons, known as the Silent Twins, spoke only with their immediate family members. The twins didn't have the best social life and were bullied regularly at school. Kids made fun of them for having speech impediments. To cope with being mistreated and misunderstood, the twins made up their own secret language, and as time went by, it became more unique and less intelligible to outsiders. They also developed other peculiarities, such as refusing to communicate with anyone outside of their family and refusing to read or write in school, and mirroring each other's actions almost perfectly. A therapist said the girls may gain some type of normalcy if they were separated, so their parents sent them to different boarding schools. The hope was that once they were on their own and able to develop a sense of self, the girls would break out of their shells and start to communicate with the wider world. The experiment was a huge failure. Instead of branching out, they withdrew themselves even more. Upon being reunited, the twins held each other even tighter. They chose to no longer speak to their parents, except for communicating by writing letters. The Gibbons sisters grew up and turned to a life of crime, committing acts of arson and petty theft. They were both sent to jail and were also diagnosed with schizophrenia. According to Marjorie Wallace's 1986 nonfiction book, The Silent Twins, the sisters had an intense love-hate relationship and eventually made a very serious pact. One had to die so the other could live a normal life. It only made sense to them. Jennifer even admitted to Wallace during a visit, "I'm going to die. We've decided." And in 1993, just hours after their release, Jennifer, at the age of 29, died on her sister's shoulder from a sudden inflammation of the heart muscle. The cause remains a mystery to this day. Do you think something like this is even possible? Is twin magic real? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 4. Robert and Stephen Spahowski. Among the identical twins, Stephen was the one who initiated a dedicated life to crime. In 1971, he stabbed Ronald Ripley, a bar owner in Elmira Heights, New York, 47 times. He was convicted of manslaughter at the age of 17 and spent the following 38 years in jail. His twin, Robert, followed in his brother's bloody footsteps. He bludgeoned and strangled at least 4 people between 1990 and 2005. In November 2005, he stepped into a police precinct and admitted to all of his crimes. 54-year-old Vivian Irizarry was his most recent victim, and her corpse was still in his basement. He was sentenced to 100 years in jail after being guilty of 4 counts of second-degree deliberate murder and an additional count of felony murder while executing a robbery. "I thought I was the only murderer in the family," Stephen stated after being notified of his brother's deeds at Attica Correctional Facility, where he had been serving time for his own punishment. There is a theory which talks about twin behaviors in psychology. Apparently, one sibling idolizes another, and it is possible that they aspire to copy each other's behavior. Only in this case, it results in a cascade of murderous crimes. Robert's stint with drug addiction revealed intrinsic genetic imprinting linked to his aggression. Impulsive behavior and thrill-seeking have a very heritable component, and these qualities raise the likelihood of crime and violence within society. Number 3. Jazz and Taz Whitehead. In April 2011, 48-year-old twin brothers Edwin and Edward Burnt were charged with felony murder after police discovered their mother's body in their Houston home. Her body was covered in bugs. A neighbor reportedly told authorities she hadn't seen their mom, Sybil Burnt, in months, and when police got to the house, it was in deplorable condition and smelled terribly, with flies everywhere. 88-year-old Sybil was found lying face down on the floor. The Sons told investigators they were watching the NCAA football championship game on January 10th when she walked into the room, slipped, and fell. They said they just left her on the floor and that she was conscious and talking for 3 full days until she died. They didn't have money to take her to the hospital, and they didn't want to get in trouble, so they didn't let anyone know what happened. According to police, after this, the twins continued life as normal, simply stepping over their mother's body. According to their defense attorney, The twins, one of whom has a form of autism called Asperger's syndrome, and the other, being so mentally disabled that he really isn't functional, shouldn't have been arrested in the first place. The murder charges were then dropped. Number 2. Darren and Damien Fernandez. In 2001, police arrested Darren Fernandez in a Boston neighborhood. He had broken into a home in Dorchester. The woman, whose house he had broken into, woke up to the sound of glass shattering and called the police. Police arrived minutes later to find Darren trying to flee the scene. He had injured himself while breaking the window. Police ran Darren's DNA through the database and discovered that it matched 2 sexual assault crimes committed in the area. In both instances, a man had broken into a lady's home while she slept and raped her. The investigation soon took a turn when police realized that Darren had a twin brother named Damien, who could have been the one who committed one or both acts instead of Darren. Police were able to convict Darren for the first assault because the victim was able to describe a tattoo on his arm. The second case remained inconclusive. At the first trial, investigators tried to pin the rape on him by claiming that he had been in the same area around the time it happened, but it was unsuccessful because they couldn't actually prove that Damien had not been in the area. During the second trial, Assistant District Attorney Mary Kelly took the jury to a Dorchester home where Darren had been hired as a painter. There, she showed them how Darren had climbed a ladder to scout the neighborhood and find out his next victim. Although this made sense to some of the jurors, not all of them agreed, and he couldn't be charged with a second assault. Darren was again tried for the third time in 2006, and this time, authorities were able to show evidence in which he had committed 4 break-ins in the same area across 1 year. One of his victims, who hadn't testified in the previous 2 cases, came forward to reveal strong connections between her attack and this one. Darren Fernandez was later convicted to serve 15 to 20 years in prison after one jury found him guilty 5 years after his original arrest, in addition to the 10 to 15 years he had already served for the first attack. And number 1, Ronald and Donald Anderson. In July of 2008, Jenny Coleman was shot and killed at a train station, and whoever did it also stole her car. Police later recovered the abandoned vehicle and found a cigarette butt inside. DNA from the cigarette butt led them to Donald Smith, who had previously been sent to prison for a different crime. Donald denied shooting Coleman and said that the murderer was actually his twin brother, Ronald. To confirm this, Donald asked investigators to show his relatives the security footage of the killer. Investigators did, and Donald's relatives confirmed that it was indeed Ronald. A few days later, Ronald was arrested. His fingerprints were found inside the vehicle, and there were even witnesses that said that they had seen him in the area where he ditched the car. Phone records also pinged him in the area. Ronald confessed to the crime, although he claims that the gun accidentally went off and he didn't really mean to kill anybody. Then, things took a turn during the trial when he backtracked and denied everything and said that it was Donald instead. Ronald's attorney added that Ronald's fingerprints were only in the vehicle because he had helped Donald clean it. The jury didn't buy it, and Ronald was sentenced to 25 years in prison.
Ten, the Hulk. A bodybuilder who tried to look like the Incredible Hulk nearly died after he injected a bizarre concoction of painkillers, oil, and alcohol to pump his biceps up to ridiculous proportions. His name is Romario dos Santos Alves, 25 years old. He used to be a bodyguard, but turned into a muscle maniac. He also happens to be facing a laundry list of health issues ever since injecting oil into his muscles. According to the New York Post, the synthetic filler he used is so dangerous that doctors at one point scheduled to have his arms professionally amputated. Yikes! Romario himself said that he got addicted to injecting the stuff into his muscles because he loved the way it made him look. After all, why work out when you could just shoot yourself in the arm with oil? The doctors told Romario that his muscles and everything inside his arms had turned to rock from so much oil being injected. His arms got so hard that he couldn't even get a needle into them anymore because they were like stone. Ew. He had to buy specialized needles that are normally used on bulls. Thankfully, he did manage to stop using the substance. Rather than amputating his arms, the doctors managed to remove the hardened clunks of stone formed by the oil. Either way, his fake muscles almost killed him. 9. The art dealer. A faker has been busted in the middle of Manhattan. While you could probably take a look around New York and see lots of fake people, You'd be surprised if one of the most popular art dealers in central Manhattan was a fake. But it's true. Mehrdad Sadiq, the owner of Sadiq Gallery in Midtown, has been selling fake items and pawning them off as real antiques. In fact, his art gallery has been an antique mill in downtown Manhattan for years, peddling fake treasures as if they were the real deal. He sold pieces of fake history and got rich doing it. He only got busted recently because of some stuff that went wrong back in April of 2019. The gallery was supplying artifacts for a show about the Rosetta Stone that was being put on at the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library and Museum in Iowa. The organizers of the event realized there were some major issues with lots of the items put on display. They were fake, and the real archaeologists and museum curators knew it. After a lengthy investigation, the police were able to produce warrants for the arrest of Sadiq and to raid his gallery. They uncovered a workshop filled with tools that he used to create his very own antiquities. Some of the pieces in his shop were labeled as Egyptian sarcophagi, valued at $50,000 apiece, when in reality they probably cost less than $1,000 each to make. It really makes you wonder just how real anything is in a store you walk into. 8. Fake wedding tan. A woman paid $25 to get a fake tan for her wedding. What she got instead was burnt, crispy burnt to the point that she looked like a slice of bread that had been in the toaster for too long. $25 isn't a lot to pay for a fake spray tan. They're usually a little bit pricier, so I guess you get what you pay for. But getting a cheap tan is not something you want to do on your wedding day. The whole reason why this woman, Derry Matthews from Buckinghamshire, got the fake tan in the first place was because she felt that her skin was too pale for her to get married, with at least being a bit darker. The treatment that she went to get was 3 days before her wedding, supposed to give her skin a summer glow. But that wasn't what happened, and she had to get married looking like she had just come out of an oven. It was her own fault, too, since she asked the beautician if she could get sprayed twice. The beautician agreed, saying that her skin was indeed pale. As a freckled ginger, a double spray and tan seemed like it would be the perfect amount for Derry's wedding. Over the next 3 days, her skin just kept getting darker and darker. She couldn't wash it off, it wouldn't go away, and she ended up getting married with her skin looking like a cheese cracker, rather than the natural shade it would normally be. The only silver lining was that her tan made her teeth look extremely white. 7. Disability fraud. A bodybuilder in New York has been busted for faking a disability for years. According to the report from Fox News, investigators finally caught on to his scam after they saw pictures of him showing off his muscles on his wife's Instagram. His wife, a professional bodybuilder, seemed to support her husband's fraudulent life. After all, he was collecting disability benefits on the basis that he wasn't in shape to work, but all the while he was pumping iron, eating taxpayers' money, and hanging out with his famous wife. The nerve of this guy. His name is Anthony Ragusa, married to Lolly Ragusa from the International Federation of Bodybuilding and Fitness. According to Attorney General Letitia James, Lolly had even tagged her husband in many of her posts, as well as his limousine business. That's what makes the faker even worse. He was collecting disability when he didn't need to and running a successful limousine business on the side. How long had this ruse been going on for? Prosecutors claim that Anthony Ragusa filed for disability back in 2013. He claimed that while at work, he fell and sustained an injury that kept him from working more than 15 minutes at a time. He also claimed that he suffered from severe pain, but apparently that pain didn't translate to lifting weights. He reiterated his claims in 2020, despite beginning a massive physical transformation into a bodybuilder in 2017. He's now facing felony charges of grand larceny and could spend years in jail. How much jail time do you think this guy deserves? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 6. Fake doctor. A woman nicknamed Dr. Frankenstein is facing 6 years in jail for causing serious harm while trying to complete breast augmentation surgeries and liposuctions at a clinic in Russia. Her name is Alyona Verde, and she has no medical education at all. This is the real definition of fake it until you make it. She literally faked being a doctor so that she could perform surgeries and get paid for it. There really is no easier way to become a doctor than to just lure in desperate people who want to look better. She got herself a fake medical certificate and started performing surgeries on people for large amounts of cash. Every single surgery she performed experienced difficulties. Go figure. One of her patients complained that her skin after surgery was sticking out of her like fish tails. Another said that she had noticeably massive scars after a failed breast correction surgery. And a woman who wanted to fix her eyes was left unable to close them and in dire condition. 2 women even developed mental disorders. She was finally taken in by Russian police and will hopefully be locked up for her ill-fated tenure as a fake doctor. 5. Russian Popeye. There's a really terrible MMA fighter in Russia that goes by the name Popeye. He's called Popeye because he has huge biceps, but his bulging muscles are causing problems. Other than being grossly too large, they're also fake. Instead of actual muscles, 25-year-old Kirill Tereshkin had petroleum jelly injected into his triceps to give him fake muscles. The result was appealing for him at first, since his arms were 24 inches around. But things stopped being great pretty quickly when the jelly started leaking. His surgeon, Dr. Dmitry Melnikov, says that he needed surgery to remove the fake muscles. Otherwise, there's a good chance he could die. The issue is that having a toxic substance like petroleum jelly inside the human body for too long can cause poisoning to the kidneys, which definitely leads to death. Still, having fake muscles did work out in a few more useless ways. For example, Popeye has managed to procure 310,000 followers on his Instagram. His muscles may be fake, but they made him very real famous. He was only 20 years old when he got the implants, not thinking of the consequences. He just wanted to look like a beefcake, but having huge fake muscles turned out to be a problem as an MMA fighter, since he basically lost to everyone he fought. The muscles weren't real, so they didn't make him stronger. 4 years later, he found himself in terrible pain with his immune system in revolt from the toxic substance in his arms. He's already had 3 surgeries to try and remove it all, but there are still more to go. 4. The Thai 8-pack. A man from Thailand spent $4,000 on a bizarre surgery to get fake muscles on his stomach. The procedure gave him an 8-pack in the most unnatural way imaginable. Pangpaparan Unvile. Wow, try saying that name 5 times fast. Got liposuction to remove his excess fat and then have it injected into certain parts of his stomach. The procedure not only allowed him to get rid of pretty much all his body fat, but also awarded him with the body he says he always wanted. He doesn't actually have muscles on his stomach. It's just that the way the surgery was done has created lines that mimic abdominal muscles. From a distance, he looks shredded, but if you were to touch his stomach, the muscles would immediately not feel right. The faker only looks jacked from across the beach. Yes, the surgery did help him to fulfill his preferred body image. He lost weight and looks amazing in photographs. But what do you think about this kind of procedure? Would you ever have artificial abdominal muscles made through liposuction? And do you think this is cheating? 3. Fake cop, Florida sex offender. Jeremy DeWitt is not the kind of person you want to meet in a dark alley, nor even on the streets in daylight. He's a Florida man and notorious to the local police for impersonating cops. He's been arrested on multiple occasions for pretending to be a police officer. His latest arrest came during a traffic stop when deputies found him dressed in police gear with a high-vis vest, riding a motorcycle and carrying an open firearm. According to the Orange County Sheriff's Office, deputies spotted him just shy of 10 o'clock at night. He was with a few other motorcyclists who were also dressed up like fake cops. They had sleeves with things like Protection Officer and Metro State Protection Services written on them. This is obvious fakery, and of the highest degree. Jeremy even had black stars on his collar, meaning he was faking being a 2-star general with the military. But here's where things get disturbing and terrifying. At 41 years old, Jeremy DeWitt is a known and registered sex offender. He's a convicted felon, not allowed to carry weapons, and yet is roaming the streets pretending to be a cop. He was equipped with a bulletproof vest, a baton, pepper spray, and a handgun. The police did arrest him, throwing him in Orange County Jail. But in all honesty, it's only a matter of time until this faker is out on the streets again. 2. Wedding faker. A woman, in a strange attempt to make her ex-boyfriend really jealous, faked an elaborate wedding. It happened in Germany, with the desperate faker being Sarah Villard. She hired a random man to be her groom and to take photos during a fake wedding to make her ex have second thoughts about their breakup. Of course, the groom that was hired was incredibly handsome. Sarah also rented out a fancy villa and had her best friends play the roles of bridesmaids. She then posted as many pictures as she could on Instagram so that her ex-boyfriend wouldn't miss them. Well, her plan worked as well as she had wanted it to. Her ex-boyfriend called her the next day. He accused her of cheating on him while they were together, and then he even went to her house and tried talking with her. But she had already gotten her fake revenge and wasn't interested. And even though she may have fulfilled some weird vengeance plot, all her fake wedding scheme really did was make her look like the pettiest person on earth to everyone who knows about what she did. Seeing as we're talking about it right now, that's basically everyone with an internet connection. 1. Too hot to exist. A model has repeatedly had her Instagram account deleted by Instagram itself because they think she's fake. Her name is Veronika Rajic, and she's not even a little bit fake. She was a finalist for Miss Slovenia back in 2016 and spends her days traveling around the world. She posts bikini pics on Instagram while visiting exotic countries. But her pictures are so outrageously attractive that people who see them think she's fake. So much so that Instagram has shut her account down before because she looks like a scam artist. She's even been bullied and accused of having plastic surgery, even though she's never had a single surgery in her life. She also doesn't use fillers or shaping in any of her pictures, which people are convinced is a lie. Some have called her the hottest woman in the world, so hot that until people meet her in person, they don't think she exists. Veronika even says that she sometimes feels like an alien, and that her life has been hard in a lot of ways because she is too beautiful. Yeah, sorry, Veronika. I don't think you'll get much sympathy from us. What do you think about Veronika Rajic, the woman so hot that she's as mythical as Santa Claus? Is she real or a total faker? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe before you go for more awesome videos from the channel. See you next time. Bye.